The following episode may contain discussions surrounding suicide, mental health disorders, self harm, and other very real, very triggering topics. If at any point during the episode you or someone you know is in need of support, please don't wait. Call 988 or visit iasp.info to easily access resources or have a one on one conversation with a certified mental health expert. Hello again, everyone. I am here with Amanda Dahlman, and I did not ask how to say it beforehand, so I'm hoping that's right.
Yep, you
Oh,
got it.
good. We got the thumbs up. Okay, I've been horribly wrong before, so I started to ask guests before we start recording, but I'm glad I got it right. It's a pet peeve of mine not to get names right because I've interestingly enough, one of the guests that I've gotten closer to, I said her incorrect school, and that was mortifying because she had just transferred schools in like the mid COVID season. So there wasn't a lot of statistics on her yet for her new school. So I was like, she went to Virginia Tech. For all of our avid listeners, it was Mara Perry. But for anyone, actually, you might know Mara.
Yeah, she shared her story on Hope for Athletes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That might be where I found her, to be honest. We
Yeah.
do kind of piggyback some of your athletes, but you have
Mhm.
so many, and they're like, I don't know. It's some of their stories I just want to talk about more, you know? Like I love how how deep you get in writing, and I think that's so powerful, the athlete's voice. We'll get into all this later on too, but I think it's like you provide an avenue for people to read a story because some people get more from reading, whereas we provide an avenue for people to listen and watch because some people get more from that. So I think it's beautiful sometimes when we have overlapping guests. Now it's impossible for us to have all the same, but whenever a guest story touches me, I try not to let that moment pass by and I at least ask them. So I
Mhm.
guess thank you for not ripping our heads off, for letting us borrow some of the stories that your athletes have shared with you first. But yes, so I got Mara's school wrong at first because also in your photo she was still at Virginia Tech at the time. Well, she
Right.
had transferred to a school that I don't know how to pronounce. It's a smaller school, but she loves it.
I
So
think it's Bellarmine.
Bellarmine, yes, yes,
Yeah, I don't know how to
Bellarmine, yep,
pronounce it.
yep, yep. And she loved it there, and she's having a fantastic season. But to get back to you, you guys play the same sport, you and Mara. Actually, ironically enough, volleyball you play or had played.
Right.
Um,
Yep, exactly.
what was that like for you? Because my girlfriend actually played volleyball all throughout
Mm.
college, and it's always interesting to me how different a person's experience is within the same sport.
Mhm. So true. I really, like, for the most part, enjoyed playing volleyball. I had played volleyball since like third grade, is when my older sister taught me how to play and started teaching me different skills. And we would just like bump the volleyball back and forth together in the yard. And she just taught me like the fundamentals. So it gave me kind of a head start in terms of like learning the basic skills. And then by the time like fifth grade came and sports actually was starting, I already kind of was a little bit further along than the other girls. So I think it kind of gave me a boost of like confidence, a boost of self esteem going in there. And then I started club volleyball pretty soon after that. And it has just always been like my favorite sport. I played a few other sports, but I think with just having that like natural ability with volleyball, it's what set it apart from other sports that I had played. And then I think also the part about volleyball that I love is just like the teamwork aspect. Like you cannot win games when you only have one amazing player. Like you have to have multiple talented players because there's bumping, there's setting, and there's spiking, and you can't just have only a good passer and then no good setters or hitters or the other way around. So I think I always have appreciated that part of volleyball is getting to work together, um, and lean on one another and celebrating one another. Like so, I always played back row, and I loved playing back row. There was a part of me that was like, oh, I wish I was taller so I could block and I could swing. But I always just enjoyed like celebrating when the hitters would get a kill and just like giving them the biggest hug and whatnot. So yeah, yeah.
And the thing is, you probably are tall, but just not for volleyball.
I'm 5'2", so I'm pretty short.
Okay, maybe not, maybe not. All right, I'll eat my words there. Um, so back row, what positions are back row?
So there's libero, which is like that opposite colored jersey. You're like the odd one out. That's what I played
Okay,
for all 5 years. So I did an extra COVID year.
yeah,
So while I was getting my master's degree, that first year, my master's, I was able to do play volleyball to finish out my eligibility. And then the other back row player is a defensive specialist. So they're also
okay,
playing back row, but the libero is considered like the quarterback of the defense.
yeah. You guys, if the ball's out of control, you guys can calm it down.
Hmm.
I guess more efficiently sometimes, or most of the time. Otherwise, that wouldn't be your position than the rest of the players on the court,
Hmm.
which is kind of neat. And I'm curious because I found that in my personal experience with my COVID season being my master's season as well, for soccer, I felt like I did maybe athletically worse than I did and statistically worse than the year before. But I feel like I got so much out of that season that I didn't know I still needed from my sport. Like, I feel like my role transition from maybe being more of the on-field leader in terms of always being able to make the play or maybe stopping the ball because I play defense, stopping the ball if the goalie made a mistake or making a key pass. I found that my role was more communication and teaching the younger players like, look, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have the glory plays. They'll come in your career. Like, don't rush them. You're
Hmm.
going to be celebrated on the weekend when you score the winning goal. Like, it's going to happen. Don't
Yeah.
rush. Like, I try to teach them everything I wish I'd known, and
Mhm.
I had upper level or upperclassmen players do that for me, so I felt like that was my responsibility at that time. But I'm curious for you, did you excel statistically in your last season, or was it more of like a my experience where you felt like you were more of a teacher or a role model?
I think for me, I think it's kind of both. Like, I think that I
Hmm.
did excel statistically, and I think I kind of took on that role of kind of, um, I want to say like shepherding the younger ones or just like coming alongside of the other ones, showing them the ropes. I especially grew really close to the team manager, and she, yeah, like, because I think with her role, it's like you're part of the coaching staff, but you're also like not technically a coach. And so I kind of just recognized that and really wanted to make her feel like more seen and just like noticed and appreciated for the things that she was doing behind the scenes. But yeah, I got like defensive player of the year.
Oh wow.
And I got like first team all conference. But it's interesting because from like the outside looking in, everybody's like, oh, like she's probably so happy. Like she is doing amazing, getting these great stats and these different accolades. But I was struggling a lot with like depression, like all throughout that season. And so, in a way, it almost made it harder for me to even consider opening up because people would be like, what? But like, you're doing so well. And I think that would have confused a lot of people.
Yeah, I can relate on so many fronts there. Maybe not with the type of mental health that you went through with depression, but anxiety and OCD. So almost the opposite end. But to get back to the team manager, I actually lived with our team manager for three of my 5 seasons there. So it was like it was cool to see his perspective, right? Because like coaches would bounce ideas off of him, but he's athletic. I mean, he swam, played baseball, but not necessarily soccer. He just fell in love with the group of guys and was like, "Look, I'm here." Like, he celebrated goals harder than I did, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see how much our team, like you said, for a team aspect,
Mhm.
someone from the outside coming in could buy into it and enjoy it just as much without stepping a single second on the field.
Yeah.
And I guess I appreciated what he did. I never didn't appreciate what he did, but I guess I didn't realize what he did for our team until he was gone that graduate year. Like, and that's when I felt more responsibility. Like, he alleviated those mundane 20-minute tasks that sometimes captains are supposed to do, like make sure everyone's at the weight room, make sure everyone's doing this during off season. He made a weight program for us. He helped us with our nutrition. He actually did mental health check-ins for us. Well, when those were gone, no other team manager came to fill in. Coach just naturally said, "Hey, Caleb, you're into mental health. Can you do all of this?" And I felt obligated to say yes, and that was a choice that I made. So I'm not. But to me, like there is that aspect that a team manager brings to a team as a whole that I think can really tie a team together or tear them apart. So I don't know, give a little shout out to Nate. He
Yeah.
does a lot. I'm still really close to it, but he moved to Florida, so
Hmm.
it was cool to see that. But um, I was going to go back to something else. Then I kind of went off on a side tangent, but we'll get back to it if it comes back to me. Depression and OCD and anxiety.
Yeah.
Similar to me, the year I had my best statistics, I was the most fit of my life. That's when all of my symptoms, if you will, presented themselves the strongest. And that's one thing that I still don't know why, because they shouldn't have, if you think about it from a logical standpoint. Like, you are on top of your sport. I think I was like second team all region that year. Like, I played on a semi pro team for a while, but then ended up getting all region accolades there. And then literally the next year had the worst statistical season of my life, but was at so much more at peace with the game. So it was such a weird shift, and it was an uncomfortable shift. But I want to unpack that a little bit for you, and then just kind of share side anecdotes for myself. But um, when you say, like, from the outside looking in, people were like, "Oh my God, she must be doing fantastic." Like,
Hmm.
and I'm assuming you're an intelligent person. Otherwise, I mean, anyone who has a master's degree has some sort of level of intelligence. You were probably doing pretty well in school.
Hmm.
Um, in sports, it's easy to put on a facade so people around you don't ask you questions. I mean, that's a whole other episode we could do. But what did it feel like to hear all that, or assume all that was being said, but then to know yourself, like, I'm really just okay? Go Global is a free flowing technology company that handcrafts, embellishes, and manufactures garments and accessories. Designed on the principles of people, places, and possibilities, Go Global reimagines fashion and is inspired by you, the people of the world.
It felt very like isolating and just I felt misunderstood, I think. And I think maybe some like anxiety and fear, like, well, what if they did find out? I don't know. It was, I think just the biggest thing that stood out to me was just this isolation that felt very crippling. Um,
That's powerful.
yeah.
And that's that in itself, like you said, is scary. Like, no one, we're social creatures, humans. No one wants to be alone. Like, there are times where you shut your door and you're like, no one talk to me. But you always open your door again. You don't just exist in your room. Um, when you felt isolated and alone, did you rely on volleyball to help you out, or did you have another kind of therapeutic avenue?
I just remember being in like survival mode and really like volleyball just was always my outlet. But at the same time, I was kind of wrestling with should I quit? Or, but then if I quit, who am I without volleyball? And so it was just like,
Mm,
I just didn't really know what to do. And I think it was
yeah,
because I had always known volleyball. I wouldn't even allow myself mentally to even give myself the option to legitimately quit because I'm like, I've always done it. So I have to keep doing it.
yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. I guess a good place to start would be to kind of walk us through your volleyball journey from as early as you want. I'm not going to tell you when you have to start, and then kind of walk us through the decisions you made. I know a little bit about your story, but fresh ears do not. So if you could walk us through, like, your volleyball journey, yourself as a person, just essentially your story, and then we can unpack from there.
Yeah. I'm like, where do I even start? um, I'll try to keep things like, more concise, but still trying to give people a good idea of um, season by season.
Yeah,
So,
whatever's natural to you, go for it.
yeah. So like I said, I grew up just loving the game of volleyball so much and had always just enjoyed playing it. And then when that kind of shifted, it was in high school. I ended up making varsity as a freshman. And so I played on varsity all 4 years. And I was kind of always known as like the really good like volleyball girl, especially making varsity right away. That was just always the title that people would like refer to me as. And so it really just became a huge part of my identity. Like if I would introduce myself, I'd be like, my name's Amanda and I'm on the volleyball team. Like I just couldn't picture my life without volleyball. So when I started to experience performance anxiety, it was like, I want to say it got really, really bad like sophomore, but especially junior year of high school. And it was like as the recruiting process was getting closer and closer, it was like my fear of failure just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's when I started to lose my love for the game because I just felt so anxious every time I would step out on a volleyball court. And then I'm like, well, why am I still playing this if it I don't even enjoy it? And I just got very confused and I felt very alone because I never told anybody what I was going through. But I will say I'm not like upset at myself for not having opened up because I also recognize that like nobody ever talked about mental health in high school. Like none of my coaches ever brought it up, club volleyball coaches or my high school coaches. And it was kind of just like I knew of the word mental health, but I didn't actually
Mhm.
know like definitions of different mental health like conditions and ways to identify different mental health conditions and stuff. So, um yeah. And so then I decided after my junior year that I was not going to play in college because I told everybody, I was like, I'm so burned out. Like, I just do not want to play. And that's kind of what I would refer to it as. But honestly, like, I didn't even have the language to be able to say, like, I'm struggling with performance anxiety. All I knew was that I just felt like I just didn't like it. And I felt the physical symptoms of anxiety, but I didn't know that it was anxiety, if that makes sense. So I'd get like headaches
Totally, yeah.
and I'd get nauseous before games, and just did not feel right. Felt just like a lot of discomfort. Yeah. And so then after I finished my senior year of high school season, I didn't play club because I wasn't going to play in college. And it was the weirdest thing to not have volleyball. And I missed it a lot, but I went back and forth in my head because a part of me was like, I'm free of this anxiety. And then a part of me was like experiencing a lot of grief and loss. And also this confusion of like, who am I without the sport now? Like, did I make a mistake? Should I rethink this? But then I have another moment where I'm like, oh, but I love not having this anxiety that is so crippling. So I'd go back and forth, depending on the day. And eventually um so also like my faith is a big part of who I am and just something that I value. And so I just remember like talking to the Lord about it, trying to figure out like what his will was for me. Like, God, like, do you want me to play in college? Should I not play in college? And so I like prayed about it a lot. And then on one of my visits to Messiah, which is where I ended up going, I just decided why not meet the team? Why not meet the coach and just kind of see what it's like? And so still remember like telling my parents that I wanted to just give it a chance. And they were like, what? Like, we thought that you didn't
Uh,
want to play. And I was like, yeah, I thought I didn't want to play either, but I just want to see kind of what happens. And so my mom and I flew out there for a weekend. I got to do an overnight with the team and I just loved the integration of like faith within sports. That's like what a big thing that kind of Messiah is known for is being like a Christian based institution. And so they heavily integrated those two things together, which I had never even heard of. Like I didn't even know it was possible. So after just kind of seeing how that was so different than anything I'd been a part of, I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I should just give it a chance. If I hate it, I can quit. And so I decided to commit and play. And um, I'm trying to think. So like freshman year and sophomore year, and like halfway through junior year were like really great. I really loved getting to know my teammates more. Got super close with them, and especially with the girls all being believers too. I think just having those values in common I think just naturally bonded us a lot closer. We would do like team devos every Sunday where we would get to like either dive into the Bible or we'd share like our testimonies with each other. And so that was something that I really appreciated. And then junior year is when I had experienced like a traumatic event, and so it really compromised my mental health, and it really heightened my anxiety and my depression, and that was the first time that I had also gone to counseling. So junior year, I remember kind of opening up to my teammates about what I was going through, and they were super loving, super supportive, and very like encouraging surrounding me considering going to counseling, which I'm so thankful for because not everybody's like that with the stigma of mental health and therapy and like medication. So I went to therapy for the first time. And that was the first time that I actually realized that I might want to pursue like becoming a counselor myself. That's a whole nother side note. But so yeah, I was able to go to therapy and specifically work on like the anxiety, because that was what was really, really consuming me. Um, and so also with the traumatic event that had taken place, like um, I ended up then just unfortunately like experiencing some like emotional like mistreatment from one of my coaches, and it was really, really odd and unfortunate because I felt like I had a great relationship with my coach before this happened, but um, just ended up feeling like the person was controlling a lot of like who was in my support system, and just like she was starting to treat me differently than before. And so that was really, really hard to know how to navigate. And that was also kind of feeding into that like depression and that anxiety, was just trying to like manage that relationship and trying to figure out what to do. And but I also, like I said, I loved the sport and had also learned how to incorporate my faith like into my sport. And I think when I realized that I'm playing my sport to glorify God rather than to have the best stats or to please my coaches or to please my parents, that just like completely took away a lot of the performance anxiety that I'd felt before. So it was interesting because the anxiety wasn't necessarily from sports, from volleyball in college, but the anxiety was more so just like the schedule that we have when you're a student athlete. And then from the trauma that I had experienced, it was like the after effects that was playing into or like feeding into that anxiety and that depression. Um, so yeah, so then like senior year and my fifth year were kind of similar. Obviously with all the COVID stuff, and then was still kind of recovering from this trauma. It was still just kind of up and down with that anxiety and that depression. And then it's just been an interesting journey since like graduating and no longer being a student athlete. I mean, that's a whole nother topic that we can get into as
Yeah.
well, but that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'm glad that we kind of stopped, asked you to give some context and keep going forward, because I think I had some questions in my head that I kind of wanted to ask, but I think could kind of go a different direction. I think it'd be more beneficial for our listeners if I kind of just spoke off the cuff here rather than some predetermined questions. But one thing I wanted to point out is thank you for sharing that. I
Mhm.
think, or at least I try to thank all of our guests. Sometimes I forget and I feel bad when I listen back, but thank you to all those people I didn't thank as well. But it's not, and I use the word easy, but it's never easy to just relive those experiences, whether you talk about them for 10 seconds or a couple minutes to give some context. But every guest and every listener is affected differently. Obviously, at the beginning of every episode, we do provide 988 and a different website that you can go on if you do experience some trauma of your own when listening to our guest stories. I just want to bring that back up. But for you, Amanda, thank you for sharing. And I want to kind of go back to right at the end of high school for you, because and then maybe chronologically work forward or jump around, but we'll see. But when you were talking about not wanting to play again, um, that kind of hit because there was never really a moment in my career where I was like, do I not want to play again? Like I was addicted to the sport, honestly, and I've come to find that I was addicted to the pressure that came with it and a whole lot of psychological junk going on up in my brain. But um were was the pressure or the feeling of volleyball, like you said, it was a little too much at one point.
Mhm.
When you made the choice to resume and play in college, do you think that was a choice for yourself, or were you trying to keep people around you happy and not ask you a ton of questions? I'm just curious.
I really do feel like it was actually for myself.
Okay.
I think I think I had a really hard time because I am a people pleaser. Like at first when I had decided that I wasn't going to play, and I think that was very genuine as well. Like I just was like, I literally cannot do it. I cannot picture myself doing it. And, maybe there was a slight bit of myself that was like, well, everybody has been expecting me to do this. And also, people were like, you're so good. How can you just like throw away your talent? Um, so maybe there was a slight part of me, but I don't think that that decision was like only because of other people. Like I think there was a big part of me that did want to give it a chance, and then I think I had been very like prayerful about it too and felt just like a peace about it. And so um I don't know, I just felt like it was where God was leading me to, and so I think that was a part of like the peace that I was experiencing, where that was coming from.
Yeah, and as a people pleaser myself for most of my life, it's tough because you sometimes get lost in your own identity, right? Like, am I doing this for myself? Am I doing this for my family? Am I doing this for my partner? Am I doing this for my friends? Like, you forget, you know what you're doing it and why you're doing it, but you forget who it's for. And a lot of times when your actions, your choices aren't for yourself repetitively, I'm not saying that you should walk around only going me, but when a big life decision like this isn't made with yourself in mind, a domino effect can happen, and that choice just leads to so much more pain and trouble and confusion, and it's just like I said, a horrible domino effect. So I'm very happy to hear that it was majority for yourself.
Yeah.
um, but again, that goes back to the complicatedness, or the complexity, I guess is a better word. Good English today, Caleb. Um, of mental health, and why I'm glad you gave yourself grace for not knowing when you were younger what was going on, because it is just this huge scary place for a lot of younger people, for a lot of older people, I guess, for a lot of people who don't or haven't yet educated themselves on the topic, to the extent they need. Like for myself, I wasn't really educated on it until my experience, I guess, till my anxiety attack. And then even then, there's a difference between a panic attack and anxiety attack. So I'm still learning all these things, right? And I'm 4.5, 5 years immersed in the mental health world. By no means like an expert yet, but no longer like a beginner. That again, it goes to show you like it's just so complex. Like if she had made her choice for someone else, it would have sparked a totally different reaction in her mind and then potentially her body. Like it's just one little choice can lead you down a completely different path. And I don't say that to scare people more, because I don't think, I mean, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I don't think you would change much about your path because of where it's led you today, and the goodness that you were able to find in it. But if you had chose to not look for the goodness and the hope and see the light, um, like I said, that choice could lead you down a different path. But now let's kind of go back to your story. You've chose to play in college. You've
Mhm,
selected your school, Messiah.
mhm.
Side note, really stinking good at soccer. So
Yeah, they are.
um, that's my sport, but really stinking good at soccer.
Yep.
Um, Now you're there. You're away from home. What is That's for a lot of college students, not even athletes, is a big jump in itself. I mean, you're with someone, your caretaker, your parents, your grandparents, whoever it is that took care of you, even if it's a sibling, you're with them for 17, 18 years of your life, and then poof, you're on your own. Did that have any effect on your mental health? Looking back at it now, maybe not recognizing it in the moment, but looking back at it, did that affect your mental health?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I went through homesickness every single year. Like um I missed my parents for sure. I'm close with my family and I was 12 hours away from home because we live in Wisconsin and Messiah is in Pennsylvania. So it's really far. It's not like I can just drive home on a weekend. Like it's an all day long drive or you got to book a flight for like I would usually book a flight for like shorter like Thanksgiving breaks and stuff. So that was hard, being super, super far away. And I had also gone through a breakup a month into my freshman year of college. And so that
Oh
was
man.
also really hard. And then on top of that, transitioning into like college academics and college athletics and having a new roommate and learning how to live with another human being. Like there were just so many things that I had to adjust to. And I think having my teammates support alongside of me was like the difference maker for me,
Yeah.
um, because I was able to grow very close to them very quickly.
They're like, they just become like your new family.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I find it interesting, the dynamic too. Like my friends, even like what I used to pull from my mom, I now talk to one of my other friends about. What I used to pull from my dad, I now talk to one of my other friends. Like it's kind of cool who takes those roles that used to be in your life and then provides you what you need for 4 years. But there's so many things we could talk about on this podcast. We might have to have you back on because I'm really curious. But we're not even halfway through yet, and I'm already asking you to come back on. But like when you select people to fill some sort of responsibility in your life, or fill someone else's old responsibility in your life, that too can play a major part on your mental health. Like it's just so deep. So one of the questions I have, I'm hoping you can give some advice to maybe some people who are, I mean, specifically student athletes, because that's the majority of our audience. How can they rely on their teammates in a healthy way to help them get over that homesickness hurdle or to get over that fear of being with a new person or a new roommate?
Well, I think when it becomes unhealthy, if we're looking at it from like the other side, is if
Yeah.
they are just going to that like one teammate all the time and there's like no other teammate that they can confide in. There's no other support, no other coach, no other counselor. Like I think it can be really helpful to have at least like 2 to 3 people in that inner circle. So that way that person that the person that's struggling with the person that they're relying on doesn't feel all this pressure like I have to be
Hmm.
everything for this person
Good point.
because that can be exhausting. So if I was the teammate that was the one that like the other teammate was confiding in, I would just encourage them to tell their teammate like, I really want to be here for you. I also think it would be good to maybe consider seeing a therapist, or is there anybody else on the team that you feel safe with or comfortable with? Maybe we could both support you together. Um, so try not to make them. It's hard because like you don't want to be like, I don't want to be here for you because like I mean if that's how you genuinely feel, like I I don't know, like I would just be very careful with the way you word it and
Hmm.
just try to reiterate, yes, I want to be here for you, but at the same time, I think it would be great to invite other people in as well. And so, whether they're more comfortable with asking another teammate or confiding in a coach, or or maybe even going to see a therapist, I think that can really be helpful to alleviate some of that pressure on the person that they're confiding in.
Empire Specialty Printing is a family owned and operated screen printing and promotional products company. ESP has been in business for over a decade by providing consistent and high quality service. Products include custom hoodies, shirts, hats, business supplies, and much, much more. Whether it's for a family party, school team, group, or corporate apparel, Empire Specialty Printing has what you need to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, there's power in numbers, even
Yeah.
no matter what it is, there just is. And I think that also good to have multiple people in your backpack or your support system, whatever you call it. We refer to it as having people in your backpack. Um, I like to think of it as like sometimes like I have people in my backpack for third grade. It's like my textbooks, and I take them out when I don't need them anymore because sometimes the backpack gets too heavy, and that's again a whole nother segment. But um, I think it's important to have multiple people in your circle as well because they bring a different vision or viewpoint to the scenario. They bring a different opinion, right? Because I could think, oh my God, that's what I was going through. This is what worked for me. Whereas if I don't know, let's just say Joe was confiding in me and you could be like, no, that didn't work for me. What Caleb did. Here's another option that I would not have even known about. I would have been like, really, you went through that too? Like we could have done it together. Like so, the more you can be vulnerable and open up comfortably, not forced, to your teammates or your support system, because I've had some teammates who have confided in people outside of athletics just because they needed a break from that world. When you find those people you're comfortable with, just to be open and honest and relatable, really, because chances are they're going through something too and might ask you for help. I always use an example. One of my best friends growing up in college was Tassos, and he was a year younger than me. And he was been a guest on this episode, Anastasios Diakovasilis. It took me 3 years to be able to say his name, so he's Greek.
Wow.
I still have to text him on how to spell it, but I'm getting there. But anyway, I can he confided in me early on because he was going through struggles with a lot, and he said it on his episode, so I'm comfortable saying it here. He went through battles with his physique and his weight because he has the capability of being the most muscular person in the room or just losing all his muscle and being overweight, or he has the capability of being the most intelligent person in the room or just not necessarily applying himself. So he was going through all those things that you experience on your own time. We've all been there. But he came to me as just a year older, and he's like, what did you do to get through this? Who did you seek help from? How did you do this? And I had to tell him, like, look, I don't have all your answers because I can't. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. And even then, we just talked about this on one of our last episodes. They don't have all the answers, and they can't, right? You have to find your own. We can just make mere suggestions. But long story short, he confided in me. Come to find out, my graduate year, I had to go back and ask him for help. And I don't know if I would have if he never came to me first and opened that gateway. So I always am thankful and appreciative of him for opening up and trusting me. And it just created a relationship where now I could just text him and be like, hey, dude, I'm having a rough day. I don't need advice. I just needed to tell someone I'm having a rough day. And he's always like, hey, remember when you did this? And he always brings like back a good memory for me so I can either restore confidence or whatever he thinks that I need from the conversation. So if you, it's always important to open up to at least one, preferably two or more people on your team. That's great advice. I'm glad you brought that up because it sparked a happy memory for me that I don't know if I would have had otherwise tonight.
Yeah, I love that because everybody has different ideas and different like past experiences, and
yeah,
it also just kind of reminds me how like I don't know, having support from a therapist is beneficial in its own way, and having support from a teammate is beneficial in its own way because like having a teammate there who gets it, who like during practice you can rely on or tell them how they can support you when you're in that environment. But then like a therapist isn't going to be able to do that, but a therapist can give you like coping skills and different things to be able to take beyond that. And so it just reminds me that like each support piece can kind of serve a different purpose, and both of them are like needed and helpful.
Yeah, I think I like the four-legged chair example. I don't know if you've ever used that.
I have not.
Well, it has multiple applications, but like if you think of a chair with three legs, it's a little wobbly, right? You have three people that you confide in. I mean, maybe one's your counselor, one's your best friend, and one's your mom. But if you add that fourth, a second teammate, you come out with a sturdier chair. I always like that example. And then if you take away one, your chair's not necessarily going to tip over. You're just going to wiggle for a bit until you can figure out how to get that leg back on. I always find that visually helpful for all those people who need a little visualization. So, I mean, again, it's applied across a lot of different aspects, but in this specific conversation, we could say each one of the legs is one of those pillars or people that you lean on for help. Remove one, you might struggle for a little bit, but as long as it comes back eventually, you can sit down, relax, take a breath. I just find that a good example. So
yeah, I love a good analogy like that.
Some people say a table, some people say a chair, anything with legs, basically, that's not human.
Yeah.
um, but cool, yeah. So, and then it gets kind of interesting for you. Not that it wasn't before, but there's so much to unpack in your college journey between being very successful, obviously knowing there's that borderline confident cockiness that you have to be successful, but then the shame that comes along with it because you're like, did I overstep that line? Was I accidentally cocky at one point? It's the learning to give yourself grace. It's to understand what you went through. It's to notice what you're going through. There's so much in your story alone that I think a lot of athletes don't realize they experience until they A, either hear it from someone like yourself, or B, look back 10 years down the road and go, oh my goodness, like this is what happened. This was a lot going on for me. Like kudos to them for getting through it. But then it brings up old memories. When you were going through it, was there like an aha moment where you were like, oh crap, like I'm going through a lot right now? Or was it just like a culmination, like a slow, I won't say that, like a slow process where you're like, this happened, you're like, okay, I can shake it off. Then this happened, you're like, okay, I can shake it off. And then finally you were just like, enough.
There's one specific moment that definitely stands out. It was the fall of my junior year. And I remember that was like when the anxiety just kept like building and building and building. But I just kept convincing myself, like, I just keep shoving it down. I'll just keep pushing through. I don't, it's not bad enough to get like to be considered
Mm,
to get help, because I'm able to still do my day to day routine, even though I'm like exhausted. And like the moment where I realized, oh, maybe this is bad and maybe like I should get help was I experienced a panic attack in the middle of the night. And it woke me up. It was like in the middle of the volleyball season. It was probably like end of September or something like that, of my junior year. And all of a sudden, I just like wake up out of nowhere. This has never happened before. And I like can't breathe. I'm like trying to catch my
mm.
breath, just like it was so scary. And I just like ran to the bathroom, but then I got super dizzy. So I just laid on the bathroom floor. And I remember thinking to myself, if somebody walks in right now, it's probably like 2 a.m. and they're going to wonder what is going on. And I just remember laying there, like feeling so helpless, just trying to like calm myself back down again so that I can like control my breathing so that I can get back up. It took a good, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. And then after it was done, I was just like, what just happened? And then crawled back into sleep or crawled back into bed and went to sleep. And then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, I need to get help because I don't want this to keep happening. And so that was a big, big pivotal moment for me. And that's what led me to go to counseling for the first time.
Yeah, it's crazy to me how much we had similar experiences,
Mhm.
um, but at the same time, such different ones. And
Mm,
like I said at the beginning, kind of like we're student athletes, we have a lot of the same experiences, but it's so different. Like my anxiety attack was in the middle of practice during a drill at the beginning, or I guess it was beginning of practice. And I'm a player who usually played all 90 minutes 2 days in a row when we used to play back to back. So like I should be able to run for 15 minutes. Like anyone on the team can run for 15 minutes. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be on the team. It's just how it is. Any sport. But I just sat down and same thing, right? I couldn't breathe. I was like, the heck is going on? Like, I was kind of aware what was going on because I've seen people go through them, but I was like, nah, that can't happen to me. That just happens to other people. Like, my life's good, right? And then, I mean, I have a oddly low heart rate to begin with. So, like, it's in like the low 40s, upper 30s sometimes.
wow.
And yeah, I don't know how I'm alive, but um, so when the athletic trainer came out to take my heart rate, it was in like the 60s. So she was like, "Oh, yeah, your heart rate's normal, whatever." But for me, that's my resting heart rate. That would be high for me.
Right, right.
So it technically probably should have been closer to 100, which would have been a high for a 22-year-old at the time athlete. But anyway, couldn't breathe, got really dizzy, felt like someone was just like sitting on my chest, and I was just like forcing myself to breathe. But then about 30 minutes later, it was like nothing happened. Like I was back to normal, more energy than before, but just not allowed to go to practice. I I always wonder if I didn't have the panic attack on the field, if I ever would have explored my mental health journey. Because if I had it in the middle of the night by myself like you, I could hide it. I could just, whatever excuse I wanted to give myself, make it up, and all I would have to do is convince myself. No one else would be there to tell me it wasn't true, right? But because I had it as the team captain in front of the entire team, I was like, I have no choice but to go figure out what the heck is going on so I can regain the trust of my team. That was my thought process at the time. So I, again, commend you for going to get help, because I would not have been that strong. I would have just continued to feed myself what everyone else was telling me. Like, nope, you're doing fine because your grades are good. You have a family that loves you. Um, they're all healthy, knock on some wood, but you're doing well in soccer. Like, I would have just kept believing what society was telling me, and or my group of friends. But because I experienced that so badly in front of them, I was like, I felt kind of guilty if I didn't go. Like, also, what message would that send my team, you know?
Mhm.
So do you think it would have been a different outcome for you if it happened on the court? Do you think it would have had the reverse effect and you would have just been like, oh my God, what happened? I'm not going to go. Maybe embarrassment.
Need a tow? Top Shot Transport is the place to go. From cars to machinery, heavy equipment to general freight, Top Shot Transport will give you the best rate. Top Shot Transport is fully licensed and ready to tow your stuff anywhere. Email topshottransport1@gmail.com for more information.
That's such a good question. I've never thought about that before. It's weird to think about, like, just that in general. I think that I still would have gone because I just remember feeling so miserable, but I was just like waiting for something to happen, I guess. That was kind of like be the tip of the iceberg. And so I think regardless if it would have happened in the middle of the night or if it would have happened during the day, I think that
Hmm.
that would have been my motivation. That would have been enough for me to be like, all right, like this does give me permission to go. But at the same time, like I wish that like I didn't have to wait to that point. Like I mean, now I feel like I'm putting my counselor hat on, but
Eh,
like people a lot of times people think that like something really bad has to happen in order for them to be like worthy of therapy, and I just think that that is like such a big misconception. Like anybody is worthy of counseling. And so I wish I would have known that because I think maybe I wouldn't have gotten to that point where it was turning into like panic attacks if I would have been able to learn more tools before it got to that, like it being so bad.
fantastic point, because my perception of therapy was throughout middle school and high school, all my friends that went, they either had divorced parents, they had lost a sibling or a brother or a close pet they were attached to, like something big in their life happened, and nothing had happened to me. So I was like, oh, I don't need it yet. I'll just, if I need it when I lose somebody in my life or something, I'll take it. And it's, you're right, that's not the case. Like, if you are sitting here right now thinking, man, maybe I need therapy, I would consider or suggest you consider that a little harder. Like, and if it's not for you, you don't have to continue going. That's the biggest thing for me. It's not, and not that medicine is bad, because it does really help some people, most people that use the correct one. But it's not like if you start taking, I don't know, say an anxiety pill, certain ones you can't just stop right away. And I think that's also very scary when you have to, again, a whole nother topic, but therapy, you could go to 10 sessions and then not show up again if you're good. Like, it's a crutch if you want it to be, or it's permanent if you want it to be. That's the beauty of it. Like, you decide. And if I argue, if this is what you're asking for, like me, I argue if your therapist lets you lead the conversation, then they're doing it correctly. But again, depending on what you're going for, it's going to be different. But what I get out of it, to work through my anxiety, my OCD, what I used to work through, my athletic identity. That was a new one for me. Um, I had to lead the conversation. I had to figure it out. They were just kind of like the sounding board and in the ears to let me do what I'm doing now and just continuously talk. Um, but for you, therapy, if you don't mind, what does that look like as a student who's studying it? Because you know all the tricks that they're going to try and do to get you to say certain things, and you know all that. To me is very fascinating. Like, you can go in and be like, I know exactly what you're doing right now. It's not gonna work. Like, I hate to break it to you. Can you, you don't have to walk us through a therapy session, but what is therapy for you?
So is your question kind of like, what is it like for me to go to therapy now that like I am a therapist, kind of?
Yeah, well, I guess the question is twofold now that you bring it up. What was it like before? And
Oh,
then I guess now knowing
okay.
I hate to say tips and tricks, but
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
my lack of knowledge. Now knowing the technicalities of therapy and counseling, what is it like? So I guess a little before and after.
Okay, yeah. So before, I had no idea what to expect. Like, I just remember being nervous. I'm like, what is going to be expected of me? What is this going to be like? And I kind of remember being shocked at how much, like you had said, the client leads and like we kind of determine the direction that we take and maybe
That
going
used to
into
frustrate me. Used to
it.
frustrate the heck out of me.
Yeah,
They're like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, "Just tell me why I'm here."
yeah, I think I went into it with the impression that like the counselor was probably going to be more of like the leader and I think I was thinking that they were going to, have like the answers to like fix me when that's just not the case, but like how was I supposed to know that, right? And so like the longer I went, the more I realized it's just truly like a non-judgmental space to be able to like dive deeper into things that I've been through, how they've affected me, and like my own like beliefs that I'm forming or um I think just like the therapist that I had or have had and still because I still am in therapy, I think they just do a really good job of like asking questions that help me think about things that I've never thought about before. And that's what I think I love about it is it helps me become like better at just like reflection. And then I think when we're able to like reflect more on things, then it helps us um like figure out more of how to accept the things that have happened to us so that then we're able to figure out like if we want to do things differently in the future. So I think it gives us
Mm.
more of a sense of like autonomy to be able to identify like patterns or I don't know, just different things about ourselves to really think about, okay, like, do I like this? Is this something I want to continue to grow in? Or is this something that I actually want to work to change? Like, is this a maladaptive thing that now I feel like is unhealthy? And now what do I want to do to make a change? So yeah, I feel like my thoughts on it have really, really evolved and changed as I'm sure it has for a lot of other people who are like brand new to therapy and they don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I find it interesting because I still go to therapy myself. I went, then I took a break, and then I was like, I kind of need it again. But I
Mhm.
had to come to that realization on my own. I am very appreciative of both my therapists, but I think for me personally, the first therapist I had, fantastic. They provided me with the understanding that therapy wasn't terrifying.
Mm.
Like, I was like, okay, they get paid to listen to me talk. Like, that's weird, but okay, I'll go. And I was just like, they don't want to be here because sometimes it's their job, right? Sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to go to my job, so why the heck would they want to sit here and listen to me, who didn't have bigger problems than Jimmy, who came in before me, or Susie, who
Right.
came before? Like, right? I'm a soccer player. I'm a student athlete. I have privilege. Like, I have some good things going for me. I was just like, they don't want to listen to me. Like, this is a waste of an hour that they could be eating lunch. That was my take. But my first therapist taught me that that wasn't the case. Like, yes, they might not want to come in, but just like when I don't want to go to work, I still do my work. That's the case for counselors. I saw a counselor, not therapists. They, even if they don't want to be there. They'll never tell you, number one. So you're always heard, you're always seen. And they can't tell anybody unless you are like a threat to yourself or someone else. Then there's a lot of technicalities. But for the most part, if you have a complaint about, I don't know, your girlfriend or your boyfriend, they're not just going to message them on Instagram and be like, hey, this is what your boyfriend thinks about you. Like,
Yeah.
that, and again, I didn't know that. I was just like, I told friends things in the past, and somehow it just got back around the circle and pissed somebody else off. So I was just like, oh, okay. Worked through some things, got the introduction to therapy, came back, and now really am hitting it hard with my second therapist because I'm ready. And I think that's another thing too. You can't force yourself or someone to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
You will know when you're ready. And when you're ready, just try it, because if you don't, how will you know if it helps?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting that your perception has changed so much now that you know more about it, but at the same time, it's changed not for better, not for worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed in more of an understanding the thought processes that go into helping people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's beautiful. Um, and then somewhere along the line, Hope for Athletes enters the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, we
This
haven't
is,
even
I
talked
mean,
about
this is a big part of the story as well.
that.
More recent, but still a massive part of the story, a massive part of your mission, and a massive part of what God has called you to do. Can you let us in on that life? Because again, for me in the podcast, I always like to give people different options. But for me in the podcast, it's like I started during COVID when I had lost soccer, when we couldn't play our season, to fill the void of belonging, really. The more I've worked through therapy, I realized like I did this for myself, selfishly, this podcast, and it helped me. Now I'm like, oh crap, it helped me. Why stop when it can help so many other people? But I started it because I had lost my identity for the last 20 years since I was 4 playing soccer. I needed something to get up and look forward to outside of like hanging out with my partner or hanging out with my friends. Like I needed that
Mm-hmm.
something to belong to bigger than myself or the people I see every day.
Mm-hmm.
For you, what has Hope for Athletes been?
I so relate to what you just said with like being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. I feel like that is so difficult when you retire from your sport and you have been used to being a part of a team and working on like common goals together, and all of a sudden you're just like by yourself, and it's like, what am I supposed to do now?
It's a scary place to be.
It is. Yeah, it's so
So I really didn't like myself for a while. I was like, how the hell do I have friends? I've just spent so much time by myself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, a lot of that I relate to, and I think a lot of that went into kind of me starting Hope for Athletes. I think it was hard for me to only have school on my plate. So I finished my undergrad in May of 2021, and then I started grad school in August. So I only had like 3 months off. And so I just worked for that summer and then started with grad school right away because I just know myself. And I was like, if I start working, I got my undergrad degree in athletic training. And I was like, if I start working as an athletic trainer, I'm probably never going to go back to grad school. So I was like, I just need to rip the band aid off and just go and do it now. So I started with that and did that for, well, let's see, I started in August and then I started Hope for Athletes in April. So I just spent that first chunk of time like um adjusting to grad school.
Hmm.
And also I had been playing volleyball from that August to that November. So once November hit, that's when I moved back home. And then a few months went by and I was like you said, feeling that void of I'm not a part of something that's bigger than me. And I also felt, I don't even know how to put it into words, but like I felt like I wasn't making a difference because I was
Mm.
just focused on like my career, which like I wasn't out in the field yet. I'm just studying every day. And so I think there was a part of me that was like, I just need to do something to like pour into other people and to like spread hope and to help people realize that they're not alone. So what can I do and how do I even do that? And so I think it just kind of looked like me having conversations with some friends talking about that and trying to figure out, okay, like, should I start an organization? I definitely had thoughts though, like, it's probably just not going to work out. Like, people are not going to want to follow the organization. Like, I had a lot of doubts and insecurities with it, but I think as I continued to talk with my friends and they're like, we're going to support you no matter what, that really kind of gave me that like final push. I'm like, you know what? If it fails, that's okay. My friends are still going to be by my side. They're still going to love me through it. And so I was at a coffee shop one day and I was thinking of like, what should I name the organization? Trying to figure out the name and
That's always the biggest part.
yeah.
That was my biggest struggle. I was like, I have this idea, but if
Mhm.
it's what do I call it? I still don't know if I'm sold on the name, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, because like my thought process kind of going into what I wanted the organization to look like and what I wanted it to kind of stand for was like, I definitely wanted it to be like mental health awareness with sports, but then with having like with me valuing faith and just like my relationship with the Lord. I also wanted to be like outspoken about that. And so I wanted people to feel free to share about their faith journey and how that has impacted their mental health journey if it's a part of their story.
Mm.
But at the same time, like if people are not like believers or they don't have like a faith journey, like that's okay too. And so that so then I was just trying to think of like, okay, what can I call it that would kind of like encapsulate all those three different areas of like faith, mental health, and sports. And I was just thinking about like, well, like hope for athletes. I'm like, well, that can tie into like faith, but it can also tie into like mental health awareness and how when we're creating awareness, can give people hope. And so it kind of just like clicked and I was like, all right, we're just going to go for it. And then, um, and then it was like hard at first because obviously like starting from ground zero, it's hard getting people to share when you have like 20
Yeah.
followers.
Yeah.
So it just took time and I had to be very patient with the process of it. And it's just been wild because I remember initially, like, I was always the one reaching out, asking people to share their stories. But as time has progressed, it's like 75% of the time now people are the ones reaching out to me first. And so that's kind of shifted, which has been exciting to see. Yeah, so it's been like a year and 8 months now, 9 months now that it's been going.
Ooh.
College can be a roller coaster, but Zant's got your back. First session, absolutely free. After that, just $25. Easy on the pocket, heavy on support. Stress, burnout, addiction, or trauma. Zant's expert coaches are here for you. Download the app, kick stress to the curb, and own your college journey. Your mental health, your way. Zant. Download and thrive today.
You're like 10 months ahead of us here.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful too that that's kind of shifted where you believed in yourself and what your mission enough to
Mhm.
where now people believe in what you're doing
Yeah,
and
it's
what you've been called to do. It's so cool to see what we have to look forward to at our business. And it's because we go through times we have monthly meetings to make sure we're all on the same page, but we go through times where it's like, do people really care or not? And then it becomes, okay, do I care enough to continue or should I just call it quits? And I would be lying if there were times where I was like, I should just stop. And I think you've probably went through those as well. Like it gets you spend less time with your friends. Like if you work 2 or 3 jobs, sometimes when you're first out of college, plus this, like it's just a lot. And then if you have a partner, you still want not you don't even have to. You still want to make time for them. So then you start to wonder, am I spending too much time on this and not with other people? Like there's all this stuff that goes on. But when I just spoke with a gentleman, Wes Woodson, he's come on our podcast so much. He's like the grandfather of our podcast, even though he's not that old. He's like 2 years older than me, but he has so much life experience as a 26-year-old. He shared this with us. Actually, I don't know when this will come out in our whole series, but we literally just got off the phone with him, so I think it's fresh in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
He said that mental health is such a um like dark and unknown world for a lot of people, that whether you are receiving the followers, receiving the likes, getting the views, all this stuff that's not new to us, but social media will give you physical metrics that you can go off of. Whether you're getting those or not, people are seeing what you're doing. And if you were meant to stop, you would have by now. And when you're meant to stop, you will, or shift. Like, this is not the end, nor is it the beginning. Like, we're in the middle of our journey somewhere with our company. I think for you as well, but I guess I also kind of want to ask you, when you get to those moments in this company specifically, but I think it can relate to life as a whole, that you just feel like, what am I doing? What am I doing it for? Obviously, religion is a massive part of what keeps you moving forward, but is there anything else that you just say, like, I'm going to pull myself up by the bootstraps and keep going?
I think about sometimes like a few of the DMs that I've gotten from people that have been deeply, deeply impacted by the stories that they're reading. This is also a random side note, but I just think that it's so amazing, maybe is the right word. I don't even know what word I'm looking for, but the fact that like I'm just simply holding space for athletes to share their stories. Like I'm
Mm,
not even the one that's like sharing, like it's not even my story that is continually like being shared. Like I just think that it's um been such an honor just to be able to simply hold that space. And it's really been the athletes that have like made Hope for Athletes into what it is today. And I think about that often, and it's just like so cool and so humbling. But now I lost my track of thought. What was your question again?
you were talking about the DMs that you receive.
Yes, thank you. So I think about like the few or yeah, like some of the DMs that I've gotten where people have said things like, I had a coach reach out to me once saying that she had gotten a sweatshirt, a Hope for Athletes sweatshirt, and she was like wearing it on campus one day, and she had some teammates like come up to her and they were sharing about like another teammate that they knew of that was really struggling with their mental health and was in a really bad place. And so the coach was able to like reach out to this player and get the player help. And the coach was like, this probably saved this athlete's life.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm just like, wow, like this is exactly like why I'm doing this, is because it's like saving lives, and it's also like just spreading hope and giving people the courage to speak up and get help. And they're hopefully then realizing like they're not alone and it's going to be okay. And so those are definitely like the moments where it gives me that like motivation. I'm like, okay, this is making a difference.
Yeah, I guess I connect deeply with the part of like, if it can save a life.
Hmm.
Because I feel like whether I know people or not, a
Yeah.
massive part of the reason that we continue to do this is because whenever we hear that someone else loses a battle to mental health, just a piece of me breaks, and I'm just like, number one, for them, that they didn't see the value in themselves to go get the help they deserve, and then number two, for all the people it affected around them. And I know it it I shouldn't say I know. I can sit on the outside and look in and say, like, it's not fair to say to someone who's lost the battle, like, that you need to live for X, Y, and Z. Like, what do you think will happen if you do this? Like, that's not really an effective method. But at the same time, it's like, I just can't help but have a piece of my heart break for like the brother or the sister or the mom or the dad, like, who just all of a sudden has their world stripped out from underneath them, and then maybe feels guilt. Like, it's not the person's fault who lost the battle. It's not the person's fault who is an innocent bystander who then feels the effect. So I just feel, I don't know. I for some reason feel like this deep connect, even though I've been beyond blessed to not know really firsthand too many people who've lost a battle. But over COVID, when we had like 6 or 7 athletes around Syracuse, where I'm from, lose the battle, I'm just like, one of my friends knows him. Like, that could have been me. and the narrative could be personal, or it could have been. I don't know. So I always try to do my part to let people know that they're heard at the very least, even if I don't have an answer. Which is what I think your platform really does for people, is allows them, like you said, a space to be heard, and then to also let their community know that they're there to hear people. And it's this beautiful, again, domino effect where it started because you made it what seemed like a small decision to start a company, to kind of go back on our theme of small decisions making big impacts, and to keep going forward with it. I don't know. I just like seeing this stuff succeed, especially when it means so much to me in our community. But to round out the episode here on a little bit of a lighter note, if you will, I'm just going to ask you 3 questions. Okay. And like rapid fire questions, like not like you just boom, boom, whatever comes to your head.
Okay.
I got to pinpoint what questions I want to ask exactly. So they might not be the same for the next couple of episodes for our listeners. But once we get those questions down, well, we actually might ask our listeners what they want to hear our guests answer. But until then, I'll try and pick a few. So the first one is, if you could receive a hug from one person right now, who would it be?
Probably my mom. She gives really good hugs. And yeah, she's just always been like a nurturing person, comforting presence. So I'd probably say her.
All right. If you could get rid of one material possession that you have right now that would make your life better, what would it be?
Getting rid of one material possession. Probably my desk in my room. It's not nice and I never use it. So I should honestly get rid of it and get a new one. But it's just been sitting in my room and I've just been using my sister's desk instead.
You can make use of space better, baby.
Yeah.
And then finally, who is one person that is not your mom, since you already mentioned her, that just makes your heart smile?
Probably my friend Katie. She is just like such a fun personality. She brings out this like childlike side in me, because she has like gives off this childlike presence herself. And so she's just like really refreshing to be around, more spontaneous, likes to go on adventures and like invites me to go on them with her. So I would definitely say her, because she brings a lot of laughter into my life.
We love that. We love that. We need that. So
yes, we do.
Way to go, Katie. Keep being yourself. All right.
Yes, we love
Amanda appreciates it. So before you leave, can you tell our Make Mental community if they want to support you, if they want to find out more about what Hope for Athletes is, or just find your information in general, where they can find you?
Yeah. So I guess you could say like our main presence is on Instagram. It's just Hope for Athletes, pretty simple. And then we can also find us on Facebook. We're a Facebook group on there, Hope for Athletes being the name as well. And then we recently just launched a website back at the end of November, which was awesome. Very exciting, big step. And so you can find on there just like more information about like who Hope for Athletes is, what we kind of stand for. There's a shop on there with some merchandise, and then also a contact form in case anyone's interested in sharing their story. You can apply on there. And then you can also find like our email on that website as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Make Mental podcast. We appreciate what you do for the mental health space, and clearly a lot of others do. So thank you for giving us a little bit more insight to who you are. And if you're coming over from the Hope for Athlete community, hello, thank you. And we appreciate Amanda just as much as you do. So thank you one last time, Amanda, for coming on and giving us some insight into your life.
Thank you so much. This has been super fun conversation, and I've enjoyed it.